Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 163. Got an awesome guest today. It's a former Gold Glover and a major league catcher. I always love interviewing catchers just because they have such a great perspective on a wide variety of capacities in the game. They're involved on obviously offense and defense, managing relationships with pitchers. They always have really full days and tend to be some of the really intuitive guys that have a lot of great insights to share. This guy in particular actually started training with us at Cressey Sports Performance this past off season in a remote context, and we talk a little bit about that as well. Just a really good dude that has some excellent wisdom to share, so enjoy. This episode is brought to you by AG1, the most comprehensive NSF certified for sport daily nutritional supplement I've ever tried. With so many stressors in life, it can be difficult to maintain effective nutritional habits and give our bodies the nutrients they need to thrive. As a father of 3 young kids and a co-founder of multiple businesses in multiple states on top of still being an avid exerciser, I know that busy schedules can really take their toll on us. Whether it's poor sleep, exercise or life stressors, environmental factors, or simply not eating enough of the right foods, we can often wind up deficient nutritionally. This is where AG1 can really help. It's a game-changing nutritional insurance policy. They simplify the logistics of getting optimal nutrition on a daily basis by giving you just one thing with all the best things. That's why I use it daily, as do several of my family members, and we recommend it to a lot of our top athletes. One scoop of AG1 contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients that work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet to support energy, focus, digestion, and recovery. And this can all happen for less than $3 per day and without taking multiple products. While most nutritional supplements come to market and stay stagnant, AG1 continues to obsessively improve this one holistic formula based on the latest research, producing over 50 improvements in the last decade alone. They invest in the most absorbable and natural source of each ingredient and go above and beyond in third-party testing to ensure their customers continue to receive the highest quality and best tasting nutrition happen on the planet. Whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it'll work for you, and it contains less than 1 gram of sugar per serving. They put 75 ingredients through the rigorous NSF certification test to come up with a safe formula that's trusted by some of the world's top athletes, including many of our own at Cressey Sports Performance. Right now, AG1 is giving our listeners a special offer of 10 free travel packets with their first purchase. Just head to drinkag1.com/Cressey and claim this special offer. These travel packets are perfect for supporting your immune system, energy, and gut health while you're traveling for games, training, or simply on the go. They can be great counterbalance to the less than ideal on-the-road food options that are out there for a lot of our traveling baseball players. So if you want to bridge the gap between deficient and optimal and give yourself the best chance of getting nutrient diversity, head to drinkag1.com/Cressey to get 10 free travel packets with your first purchase. Again, that's drinkag1.com/Cressey, Cressey. You won't regret it. Today's guest is a catcher who grew up in Tennessee and attended the University of North Carolina. He was drafted by the Reds in the 42nd round of the 2011 MLB draft after his junior year, but opted to return for his senior season. The Pittsburgh Pirates then drafted him in the 7th round of the 2012 draft, and he began his professional career. He was called up to the major leagues for the first time on June 19, 2016, and he spent the 2016 to 2018 seasons back and forth between AAA and the big leagues. In 2019, though, he established himself as an MLB regular with the Pirates, batting .262 with 6 home runs over 71 games. In 2021, he won his first Gold Glove as the catcher in the National League. In over 104 games behind the dish, he had 21 defensive runs saved. This was tied for the most recorded by any player at any position in MLB. Among Major League catchers, he was the only one to not allow a pass ball all season. Following the 2021 season, he was traded to the Miami Marlins, and in 2022, he caught every one of National League Cy Young Award winner Sandy Alcantara's starts. Please welcome to the show, Jacob Stallings. Jacob, thanks so much for taking the time and joining us on the show.
Yeah, no worries, Chris. Thanks for having me.
I think the most impressive part of this entire recording is going to be the fact that we both have 3 young kids at home, and we found 45 minutes to have a quiet adult conversation, huh?
Yeah, I know you caught me at a good time. We're all the way out in Seattle, so my crew didn't quite want to make that trip, so I'm out here alone, so it worked out well.
Good deal, man. We always try to get guys on the road during the season, help to fill some empty hours in hotels. But I know the life of a catcher is anything but empty. They're very full days, and I want to talk about that. But maybe the first place we could start is I'm curious about you as a high school athlete. You weren't a high school draft pick. You grew up in Tennessee. I know you had some heavy influences from your dad in the coaching community, but Tennessee's kind of like this middle of the road, right? In one sense, it's a hotbed for baseball talent, but at the other end of the spectrum, it's also a good place where you can get all the seasons. So you still see, three sport athletes at times. What was your athletic background as a high school? What's the scouting report on 17-year-old Jacob Stallings?
Yeah, I was this tall, skinny kid. I played baseball and basketball all the way through high school, so it actually made me a little bit of a late bloomer in baseball because all winter I was basically just doing all basketball, and so my spring seasons in baseball were never probably quite as productive as they would have been as if I played year round. But I love basketball. Obviously, like you said, my dad was a basketball coach, so um, I grew up in the gym, and I just loved basketball and loved basketball season. And then once baseball came around, baseball season came around, I was all into baseball. So it was kind of like two different seasons of my life. It was baseball season and basketball season, and that's just kind of how I rolled.
Did you guys have those times of year when there was like an actual transition from like basketball playoffs going directly to the first day, or you actually were playing basketball when baseball had already started up?
So there was like, yeah, towards the end of basketball season, there was always like this brief time where I was doing like 1 day a week of baseball to try to at least be a
Mhm.
little ready for the high school baseball season. But I never really wanted to go because I was always just so into basketball, and we always had a pretty good team. I won two, well, I didn't win. The older guys on my team won the state championship my freshman and sophomore year, and we were
Mhm.
always, in the state tournament and all that sort of stuff. So basketball season always ran long, but yeah, there was always that awkward time where I was forced to go to baseball practice like once a week just to make sure I was a little ready for the season.
Did you catch all the way through? Was that like you from like really, really young years, or were you a guy that played a ton of positions, then catching eventually found you?
So I did not start catching until my sixth grade summer. We actually
Mhm.
had I played on a travel team, and our starting catcher hurt his arm, and and so they just needed to throw somebody back there, and they asked me if I would do it, and I
Mhm.
said sure. And so I was back there for a couple weeks, and I was completely unaware that I needed a cup to catch. And so my coach was like freaked out after a couple weeks, like, no, you got to get this. And then so we went to a like a little World Series in Omaha, Nebraska, actually, and I just kind of started throwing a bunch of people out. And I loved catcher because I played third base and like infield and pitched a little bit and kind of moved around. But catcher, you're obviously in every play, and so I just fell in love with it. And um, yeah, but I didn't start until till middle school.
That's awesome. So obviously you do well enough in high school to make yourself a Division I athlete. Was it a hotly tested recruiting contest? Like, were there hometown people? Like, obviously your dad had the Vanderbilt relationship. Was there an appeal to try to stay local? What drew you to UNC?
Yeah, so I really always dreamed about going to Vanderbilt. Coach Corbin and my dad are really close. We're really close at the time, and um, my whole goal was just kind of be good enough to go to Vanderbilt. That's kind of where I always envisioned myself going. And when I was kind of coming up in high school was when they had the David Price, Pedro Alvarez team that was number one team
Yeah,
in the country, and got upset in the regional. So that was kind of when their program was just, starting to become one of the nation's best. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, that Vanderbilt was the first team to offer me. They offered me right before the summer before my senior year, and I didn't commit, which I think everyone was a little surprised about. I didn't commit right on the spot. I just kind of wanted to see what happened in the summer. And um, I had a really good summer, and North Carolina called, and I took a visit there, and there were a few other schools involved, but it was always kind of North Carolina and Vanderbilt, and so I kind of
Mhm.
scared the other schools away a little bit. But yeah, so I took an unofficial North Carolina, and kind of as the summer went on, um, Coach Corbin, I actually had a call with Coach Corbin. He's because they had Andrew Giobe, who was 2 years ahead of me,
Mhm.
who was a really good college catcher, and then they had Kurt Casale, who obviously is in the
Mhm.
big leagues and had a really good career. He was a year ahead of me, and the playing time situation was more open at North Carolina. So Coach Corbin basically said, I think it would be better for your development if you went to North Carolina. And so the next day I committed to North Carolina, and I'm still pretty close with Coach Corbin. I worked out at Vanderbilt for a lot of off seasons, and
Mhm.
super thankful that that he cared enough about me to be honest with
Yeah.
me, and um, that's how I ended up at North Carolina.
That level of transparency in the recruiting process is rare. So I really do respect that. Also, a
Yeah,
great podcast guest. If people haven't listened to it, he was an excellent one. So
yeah.
obviously you get to UNC, and you wound up being drafted after your junior year. You didn't sign. You went back for your senior year. But I'm curious, when you look back at like how you changed over those 4 years, what were the key competencies that you really picked up in college? That made you obviously more well prepared for professional baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest thing was just kind of maturing. Out of high school, I was like 6'5", 170, so I was just this
Mhm.
tall, skinny kid, and there was some interest out of high school, to sign. I think people liked my arm and my glove and kind of my projectability, but growing up in the um, household that I did, just being around college athletics, I'd never imagined myself not doing college athletics. That was kind of
Yeah.
the pinnacle to me at the time, and so it was a pretty easy decision, but just maturing. I mean, my body matured a lot over those 4 years, and I just got a lot better as a player, kind of, um, player and person. I just kind of learned what it took to live on your own. All the normal college things you learn at college, I think help set me up to be ready for professional baseball. But then when my junior year came around, um, we had a really good team, and we made it to Omaha, and so we lost in Omaha, but um, I wanted to just go back and try to have another really good team and finish my degree because it would be challenging to get back to finish my degree, and I didn't have an agent at the time, so I didn't really know. I probably didn't really know how much more advantageous it would be for me to sign as a junior than as a senior, but
Mhm.
it worked out. I remember we were I think it was the super regionals, and we were at practice one day during the draft, and I came back in
Mhm.
and my phone had like 20 missed calls, and a bunch of voicemails from area scouts, trying to get a hold of me on draft day, and didn't I got ended up getting drafted late, but didn't sign, and finished my degree and had another really fun year at UNC. So it wasn't a too difficult of a decision, but it was almost more
Mhm.
out of ignorance than anything else.
Well, it worked out all right.
Yeah,
You
it did
mentioned
work.
a little bit about your dad. He was a college basketball coach. It was Illinois State, Vanderbilt, and Pitt. Um, I'm curious. You mentioned obviously that college sports were kind of in your blood. It was almost assumed that you would wind up there. I'm curious what the other like key lessons are. I even know like I have my own personal biases as a coach as I like watch my daughters at gymnastics or softball or anything like that. But I'm curious like what were the perks and the potential drawbacks of having him be so obviously involved in the coaching world as your development was taking place.
Um, I think the perks, were far outweighed the negative aspects of him being kind of in the spotlight. I think kind of the main things I took away were, I just was lucky to be around high performing athletes all the time, and um, just seeing what those guys went through to, because my dad had a number of NBA players, and They all kind of got there different ways through development and, um, just kind of seeing, the toughness in some of the guys and maybe some of, the strengths of some guys and the weaknesses of others, just kind of learning, what it takes to be a high performing athlete, just, whether it was listening to my dad and his coaches and meetings or, just kind of watching those guys go through it day by day, really was invaluable for me. And, um, as far as the negative side, I guess, maybe it will cause a little more attention to be on me than maybe I would have liked. I don't really
Mhm.
like the attention to be on me. But I lived in the gym with his teams growing up, and I really wouldn't have had it any other way. I mean, I loved basketball and loved going to his practices and his games and all that sort of stuff. So it was a fun way to grow up for sure.
That's awesome. Fast forward a little bit to your professional career. I think was interesting. It's obviously a hot topic in baseball. Um, and you made the switch from a traditional catching setup. And you were a good defensive catcher before that. But you switched
Mhm.
over to a 1D down setup after the 2019 season. Actually went back and watched some video to see when the switch actually took place.
Mhm.
I'm curious what your biggest rationale for the switch was. Was it something that you fought for a long time as the industry was kind of changing? Were you an early adopter? And then maybe what are the benefits you've seen and what are the downsides that you maybe have observed?
Yeah, so you know, I got DFA'd in 2019 and went unclaimed. Um, and at the time, there were some teams that needed that needed catching help, whether it was injury or lack of performance, and I still went unclaimed. So that kind of made me self-reflect honestly about what can I do to be better. And at the time, Jordan Comedina, what he still is, in charge of catching, and he's the Pirates bullpen catcher. He and I just kind of started down this rabbit hole together of receiving, and
Mhm.
we started watching some of the best guys and around the league who had the best framing numbers, and a lot of them were one knee down. And so it was kind of a process throughout that season that I would go one knee down with nobody on, but then when runners got on base, I would go to my traditional stance. And I
Yeah.
was really lucky because in 2019, our bench coach was Tom Prince, and he caught in the big leagues for I don't know, like 15 years. And he was old. He is an old school guy. And so it was really good for me to get kind of that blend because he would sit down with me after every single game I caught and watch the video of my receiving, and from both the one knee stance and my traditional secondary stance, whatever you want to call it. And we would just dissect the video, and I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't had Jordan and Princey on that staff. And um, so, kind of fast forward, I just wasn't really, I know there's a lot of guys that go one knee down and all the time, and I'm starting to do it more often now, just kind of,
Mhm.
as I get older and as, the receiving metrics kind of become more and more prioritized in around the league. And I still can't make myself do it when there's runners, in scoring position,
Mhm.
giving up that extra base on a missed block or something like that. But you're always tinkering and you're always learning. And you know, last year I didn't have, at least metric wise, I didn't have a great year, numbers wise. So you're just always looking to get better. And I think everyone is different. I don't think there's, you should absolutely catch on one knee or you should absolutely not catch on one knee. I think it's
Mhm.
different for each guy. And, I'm lucky because our Marlins staff here is open to me doing kind of what I feel is best, and they're great about Rod Brajas and Griffin Benedict kind of just helping me
Mhm.
navigate my way through. So it's been,
Mhm.
I'm still kind of tinkering. I think everyone around the league does and is, and Um, it's just one of those things. You kind of go based on feel and game situation and score and all that.
Yeah, I think people forget too. It depends a little bit on what kind of a pitching staff you have as well. Your setup is going to be impacted by whether you have a ton of guys throwing 100-mile-an-hour four seams versus 98-mile-an-hour turbo sinkers. They're very different experiences. So yeah, I think that critical ability to scrutinize yourself is obviously super important. Have you noticed it's physically easier on you to do more than one knee down? Like it saves your body a little bit, or are you kind of indifferent to that?
No, it is, especially as I get older. 2021, I was the year I won the Gold Glove, and I blocked a lot of balls that year, and um, blocking was probably the main reason that I won the Gold Glove that year. But you can definitely feel it taking a toll, whether it's post game, just fatigue or soreness, or even in game sometimes. I mean, earlier this year, I mean, with the pitch clock, I mean, the game just goes so much faster. It took me a week or two to get in shape for those kind of just for faster games. And so the one knee does help save the body a little bit, but it's not a huge difference, at least for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think the casual baseball fan knows this. Is there's the IL list, and then there's the kind of the publicly available day-to-day list, and it's
Mhm.
usually pitchers who, or sorry, like hitters who get foul ball off their shin and they stay in the game and they work through it. It's probably like 60 to 70% catchers on foul tips, like wrists on catchers interference, thumbs getting. It's always skull, thumb, wrist, foot,
Mhm.
groin. It's just the amount of times that they get blown up with stuff. It's a very physically demanding position beyond just like being down in that position all day. It's a lot of trauma. Um,
It
so
is.
I'm curious, building on that, you led all of Major League Baseball in defensive run saves in 2021. You talked about the blocking was probably what contributed to the Gold Glove that year. Were there other things that you think led to you being as successful as you were that year? Was it just a longer runway of working the one knee down approach? Was there other stuff that you felt like played into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was obviously a really good year. I think to get that many defensive runs saved, especially as a catcher, you have to have a little bit of good fortune too, because um, the catcher, all the catcher metrics are pretty much dependent on other people as well. It's not like you're
Yeah,
just there's a ground ball hit and it's just your natural ability to go get it. I mean, framing is based
yeah,
on umpires and your pitching
yeah,
staff. Throwing guys out is based on, can the pitcher get you the ball? And there's a lot of other things that are dependent on
yeah.
other people. And so I think a little bit of it was good fortune. I think just like I said, the staff that we had, we were in a little bit of a rebuilding phase, so we had a lot of young pitchers, and there was a lot of balls in the dirt, and so I was
Mhm.
blocking a lot, but um, I just I think I was so driven that year. I mean, I was the runner up for the Gold Glove in 2020, the COVID year. I was just, I was so driven, and, you never know how many opportunities you're going to get, whether it's health
Yeah.
or, even being a starting catcher in this league. And so, I was just so motivated to do it. And then, it just really drove me all year, no matter the score, the situation. And so, um, I think it was just an extreme focus to
Mhm.
focus on a goal to get it done. I think that there were a lot of good fortune things that went in my favor, probably.
Mhm.
Just from pitching staff to opportunity, like I said, to there were a lot of swinging bunts that year for whatever reason. I made a lot of plays on swinging bunts, which helps.
Mhm.
Compared to like last season. I don't know that I had one swinging bunt that I fielded for an out.
Mhm.
So it's just kind of opportunity, a little good fortune, and then just I just had a really good year. So it was fun.
That works out pretty well. And so you had a runner up in 2020, then you won it in 2021. The obvious way to build on that is to have a Cy Young Award winner that you caught. So last year in Miami, you caught every one of Sandy Alcantara's starts when he won the Cy Young. He's interesting because he's just got this absurd combination of both velocity and stuff. And I'm curious in particular. It's a heavy two seamer, right? So
Hmm.
what are some of the unique challenges? Obviously, we know that you generally tend to steal the most strikes at the bottom of the zone, with that one you down approach. And, it's where you can kind of make up the biggest gaps. But what are some of the unique challenges of handling a guy like him who's got such high velocity, sinking stuff?
Yeah, I mean, well, especially with regards to last year, I think one of the unique challenges was the lockout and, shortened spring training. And so,
Yeah.
I was able to catch him a couple of times during the lockout, but,
Mhm.
it was just really the first month of the season was learning our whole pitching staff, not only him, kind of on the fly. Um, but, with regards to Sandy, last year, I think the most difficult part of catching a guy with elite stuff is, um, sometimes it doesn't always do the same thing. Sometimes his sinker will have 24 inches of run at 100 miles an hour, and sometimes it'll have 18. Like it's just that, 6 inches might not seem like much, but when it's going 100 miles an hour from 60 feet, it presents its challenges. But I think the thing about Sandy, is he just has so many weapons. And um, I think the hardest part for me, last year was I needed to figure out fast which weapons were working that day, because you're not going to get a hit off of him on one of his weapons that is working. The only way you're going to get him is if, something's not, you know whether it's his slider or his changeup. If it's not on that day, that last year, that was the only way you were gonna get him. It was either you're gonna get him on something that wasn't working that day, or, you're gonna get him in the first inning. And if you didn't get him in one of those, then you probably weren't getting him that day. So my job was to figure out as fast as I could which weapons were working, and kinda go from there.
We interrupt this podcast with a quick reminder that this episode is brought to you by AG1. It's an NSF certified all in one superfood supplement that features 75 whole food sourced ingredients designed to support your body's nutritional needs. I use this product daily myself, and a ton of our athletes do as well. Head to drinkag1.com/Cressey and claim my special offer of 10 free travel packets with your first purchase. AG1 gives you peace of mind that you're covering all your nutritional bases. Again, that's drinkag1.com/Cressey, Cressey, and you'll get that special offer.
That was probably the hardest part, because the only way you were gonna get Sandy, last year, was if, he got him on a pitch that wasn't working that day, or if you got him in the first inning. And he was just so good last year. And um, that was, if he got settled into a game, then there was just, you weren't gonna get him that day. He was gonna go 8 or 9 innings, and you just weren't gonna get him. So the hardest part was probably just on a start by start basis, figuring out which of the pitches were on that day and just rolling with them.
Right on. I'm curious to talk about in-season preparations. I don't think people really know or maybe appreciate what a crazy bandwidth a major league catcher has to do or deal with, I should say. It's like not just game prep for the opposing team, but it's also checking in with all the starting pitchers on a routine basis. You may be catching
Mhm.
bullpens for guys that are on other days. You might be dealing with new guys that are just come over to the team and you're trying to get to know them. Obviously, you got to hit. You got to work on your own position as well. What's a typical day at the ballpark look like for you when you're starting at catcher?
So typical day, I'll watch film before I go to the park. I'll watch, let's just say I'm catching a righty that night. I'll watch their hitters. Let's just say it's Sandy. Their hitters past at bats against Sandy. Um, that's really what I lean on the most. And then I'll watch, if there's not a lot of history, or if I just kind of want to see how they've been doing lately, I'll watch, their recent at bats, whether it's hits or how they've made outs, to kind of see what they've been hitting, what they haven't been hitting. Um, and then I'll watch the starting pitcher for that day. So it's about an hour and a half of film work before I get to the field. Get to the field, eat some lunch, do some treatment on, whatever it might be, whether it's just normal daily body prep, or if, if I've taken a foul ball off the thigh or the knee or something, I need a little extra work. Do all that, go to cage, do my routine. If it's the first game of the series, we usually have some advanced meetings going over offensive and defensive thing, or offensive and pitching side of things. So catcher's got to be in both of those meetings, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's BP, hitters meeting, and then you come back in after BP and eat pregame meal, and get the body ready again to go back out and get ready for the game. So that's it in a nutshell. I could probably go into a little more detail, but yeah, it's I have to do a few more things now than I did have to do when I was younger. There's more
Yeah.
body
People
prep
don't realize you got to be
that
in all
definitely.
the hitter and pitchers meetings. Like it's the only person that
Yeah,
has to do both. The coaching staff doesn't even
yeah,
have to do that.
exactly. So, as you get older, you just got to do more things for your body too. So, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into it, and that doesn't include, playing baseball with my kids before I go to the field all morning. So, yeah, it's good. So, yeah.
What about like the in-season training side of things? Obviously, you're using a ton of bullets on the field and getting banged up. What does in-season training look like for you? How many times a week are you getting into lift and all that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty dependent on how often I'm playing. When I was playing basically every day, the only time I'd be able to lift is on my off day, and that was usually a day game. But I usually try to get at least two in a week, two lifts in a week.
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't always work out like that, whether it's, playing time or travel, or, if something's ailing in the body, it's just sometimes you just can't make it happen. But um, two relatively, not super heavy lifts. I can't do what Sandy does in between starts. He just freaking lifts the house every time. And, as a catcher, obviously, number one priority for me during the season is maintaining just as much as I can, and then and just staying healthy. So that's what I try to accomplish when I get in the weight room. And like I said, it can
Usually
vary
pregame
from.
or postgame when you do it.
I'm pregame. I never lift on
Yeah.
days that I'm playing. I always do it on
Yeah.
my off days. So if
Mhm.
I'm much more of a pregame lifter, because after games I'm
Mhm.
just zonked and just ready to
Yeah.
get out of there, cold tub and get out of
Yeah.
there.
I know this was kind of our first off season working together. I'm curious, how your off seasons have traditionally been attacked, like what you've adjusted over the years. What's your frame of reference there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you and I, put together programs together. Well, you put them together. I did them.
Mhm.
This
You
off
do all the hard
season.
work.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that, but yeah, no. I mean, it's just like I said. And you and I talked through this at the end of last season, but you know, I used to do four days a week, pretty heavy, and the last couple of years I've adjusted more so to kind of a three day lift program, 4 days, at certain phases like we did this off season, but more priority on conditioning, stretching, kind of what you and I did this off season. Of There was a lot more prep that went into my lifts. It used to just kind of be foam roll, stretch, let's get after it, kind of thing. But
Mhm.
I think what was really good for me this off season was all the prep. Kind of, the things that you put together. Yeah, we're stretching and activating and that sort of thing. But it was kind of lifts before the lift to kind of get the body
Mhm.
activated, and it was the most healthy. Usually in the off season, I'll have a flare up, whether in the weight room, whether it's my neck flares up or, a back flare up. And I think that, all the prep that you and I did pre-lifts every time this off season really helped me stay healthy and in a good spot. So, it's changed over the years for sure. But I think this past off season, obviously working with you was um, the most detailed that I've gotten in terms of preparation, and then obviously body specific, me specific lifts going throughout the off season.
Right on. What about the actual receiving side of things? We talked about how that can beat you up quite a bit, so there has to be kind of a gradual onboarding. What does your off-season receiving look like? Obviously, there's machine stuff. There's stuff where you're actually working with the guys that that throw up there with you in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, that has changed throughout the years too. I did more defensive work this off season just because,
Mhm.
um, at least by my standards, I underperformed last year, and I think there were a number of reasons that went into that, but I just really wanted to be in a good spot this off season, so I did a lot more machine work. And then, I joke with Clay Holmes, but the year that I won the Gold Glove, he was the first bullpen that I caught, and I feel like if you can catch Clay Holmes, then you're ready for the season. So he's the main guy that I caught this offseason. Just
Yeah,
I mean, Clay, but his stuff is just
yeah.
incredible,
Might be the
and he
only
and I
way to
played.
prepare for Alcantara, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was a good prep for Sandy. So and Clay and I came up through the pirate system together. Our wives are good friends, and he and I are good friends. So um, and then, just so, it would be catching bullpens a couple times a week, and then getting off the machine probably the other, 3 of the other 5 days of the week. So, you gotta get your legs ready for spring training as
Mhm.
much as you can, and the best way to do that is um, catching guys for me. I mean, you really can't simulate it. So, I
Yeah.
catch as many guys as I can, and yeah.
I remember talking to a veteran hitter who will remain nameless, who's not one of our guys, but I'll never forget. He's like, every year I show up to spring training, in the first 10 days, it looks like it's 115 miles per hour. I throw my hands up in the air and I say I can't do this, and then somehow it magically comes around.
Mhm.
And he's a guy who's perennially hit 300 plus, so it was an interesting thing to hear out of him. But I'm curious if catching the same way, because we both know pitchers are nastier than they've ever been. Right? We're seeing this year alone, like obliques trains have gone up just because why guys are getting fooled way more than ever before. We're seeing more hit by pitches. We've seen more comebacker injuries in pitchers early this year
Mhm.
just because the balls are coming in so fast, they're going to come out so fast. Has the
Right.
catching, kind of profession had to evolve to keep up with it just as much? Like if you were to not catch guys live and just roll in that, second week of February, is everything going to feel like 110?
Um, yes, it does anyway. I mean, that the first couple times I catch clay, I'm like, "Am I gonna remember how to do this?" It's like you kinda have that panic, and I don't do a ton of blocking in the off season, so when I get to spring training, it's like, "Am I gonna remember how to block?" Like, am I still gonna be a good blocker? Like, you can't really simulate game action without actually catching guys and blocking in a game, and it always comes around, kind of like whoever that hitter was said, you always remember how to do it. But yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, my first full year in the league was really 2019, and to see how much just better everyone has gotten just in that time
Yeah.
is pretty remarkable. And it's the league. I mean, you're coming up through the minor leagues, and you have coaches tell you, yeah, biggest jump is high A to double A or double A to triple A. Like the biggest jump is triple A to the big leagues. Like the guys in the big leagues are, I mean, they're the best in the world. And it's, it, especially from the pitching side of things. I mean, we just faced the White Sox, and every single person in their bullpen throws 98 to 102 miles an hour. I mean, it's just, you maybe had when I came in the league, you maybe had one guy like that on the staff in 2019, and now it's just like they're just everywhere. So um, it does feel like 110 because everybody almost does throw 110 now. But yeah, especially on the pitching. I mean, the hitters are remarkable as well, but especially what some of these pitchers have been starting to do. It's uh it's pretty remarkable, and yeah, it makes it hard. It's hard for catchers. I mean, when you're catching dudes that throw 100 miles an hour with 24 inches of horizontal sink, and then I don't know, 20 inches of vertical depth on their sinker, it's not easy to catch, and you gotta get the eyes and the hands adjusted for sure.
That's awesome. We always wrap up with a lightning round. So
All right.
we'll rock it with advice for young catchers.
Have fun with it. That's kind of, I'll have kids ask me if I have any advice. Have fun with it. Play other positions, and play other sports, would be the main thing because for me personally, I think that kind of society today, I don't know whether it's parents or just kind of the way kids' sports are going, kids just get, locked on one sport. And if I had just played baseball when I was a kid, I would have gotten burnt out and I probably would have quit. I
Mhm.
mean, I think that not only from a mental side, but also a physical side. I mean, I think playing other sports helps kids athletically, whatever their main sport is. Um, Playing basketball helped me be more of an athlete. So I would encourage kids to play sports, have fun, don't get burnt out, and just stick with it because catching's the quickest way to the big leagues. So if you're good at it, stick with it.
That's awesome. What about you specifically? What would be the advice for a teenage Jacob Stallings?
Teenage Jacob Stallings. Just enjoy, I think I did a good job of this, but kind of enjoy where you're at because I mean my high
Yeah.
school years were some of the best years of my life and some of my favorite memories of my life and looking back there's really not much that I would have changed for myself. So just I would just say enjoy it because I got to do some pretty fun things in high school. So yeah, that would be the main one.
That's awesome. What are the players that you like to watch and why do you like to watch them?
In the big leagues?
It doesn't just have, yeah. I mean, I assume you're going to go with a catcher, but it doesn't just have to be a catcher.
Well, I mean, I think the easy answer is Shohei. We had to face Shohei a couple weeks ago, but um, you know, I I've said this before, but whenever someone is amongst the best players in the world and the best players in the world marvel at what that guy is doing, then that guy is kind of on another planet from even the best players in the world, and everyone in the
Yeah.
league just marvels at what that guy does, and it's just really incredible. But I'll try to think of a nod. As a catcher, I marvel at JT Realmuto. I mean, the guy is
Yeah.
just so athletic and so gifted, and you go to him to he's. I've tried to imitate him throwing, like his throwing stance and kind of how he goes about it. And he's just so freakishly athletic that I kind of have to do
Yeah.
it my own way. But I'm friends with guys who have played with him in the past, and um, he's just, I mean, from the catcher position, he's kind of um, I don't know, he's the guy. He's
Mhm.
just he's so athletic and so gifted that he's kind of as a catcher, he's the guy I marvel at probably.
That's awesome. You actually you led into my next question great by discussing a two-way guy because you've actually made three appearances on the mound this year yourself. You have a very
Yeah.
respectable 3.0 ERA. You even struck out Ronald Acuna. What's your secret?
Well, when I struck out Ronald, there wasn't much video on me, so I was able to kind of sneak a couple eephus pitches in there, and sneak a couple, throw one fastball, and then try to throw one as hard as I could. But I just try to change speeds because whenever a position player comes in, they usually just kind of throw the same speed, so guys are able to time them up and just whack them. So being a catcher, obviously, I just try to mix speeds and hopefully miss some barrels, make it harder because facing a position player is not an easy at bat because you're just like I have to get a hit off this guy, and so
Yeah.
people think it's really easy, but it actually kind of adds a little pressure to the hitter. So I try to take advantage of it.
Well, you've executed well. Then last question, I know catchers tend to be some of the true students of the game and definitely the most well-read. What's a book that you would recommend to just about any athlete that you've covered in the past?
Yeah, so for baseball players specifically, the mental keys to hitting is an amazing book. I've only read parts of the mental keys to pitching, but I would imagine that is equally as good. The science of hitting, I think is what it's called by Ted Williams, was is a
Mhm.
really cool book. But then for all athletes, I would say it's called Mind Gym. Um,
Yep.
GYM. It's basically a
Yeah.
mental performance book, mental, psychology book, sports psychology book. When I was in college, I started working with a sports psychologist, and
Mhm.
I I love the guy, and I invited him to my wedding. Like he was incredibly influential on my life, on my sports performance, and I would have never made it to the big leagues if it wasn't for him and all the mental side work, mental conditioning, mental skills work that we did. Um, and it's challenging. I mean, it's something that I don't think it's talked about enough, the mental side, especially
Mhm.
baseball, but just sport in general. Um,
Mhm.
the mental game is a lot of times the hardest game we play. So
Mhm.
anything a young athlete or like me, I was in college when I started working on it. Anything you can do to strengthen your mental side of your game is going to be invaluable for sure.
That's awesome stuff, man. Well, you nailed every question I threw your way. Can't thank you enough for taking the time. Hopefully, we hope to pass the little bit of downtime that a major league catcher gets while they're on the road. So, really appreciate you.
Yes. Yeah. Good talking to you. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It was fun.